Welcome to Understanding the Law, Week in Review. The show is hosted by Peter Lamont and Bob Hughes and is a service of the law offices of Peter J. Lamont and Associates. The firm has offices in New Jersey, New York, Colorado, Puerto Rico, and affiliated offices throughout the country. Understanding the Law, Week in Review is a weekly radio broadcast discussing recent legal and business news and topics. As always, we welcome calls from our listeners. If you wish to discuss any of today's topics, please call our switchboard at 347-855-8831. Please note that this broadcast does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship with any of our listeners. And now, your hosts, Peter Lamont and Bob Hughes.
Good morning and welcome to Legal and Business Week in Review. April 6th today, the first show of April, and my wife's birthday, apparently the most important day of the year, yes. So
it is.
I should not even be here. I should be home celebrating all day. But unfortunately, I'll have to wait till later. Yes, we've got a lot of things that we're going to do today and something new. Yes, new, because as I was telling Bob before we went live, my life is extremely boring, and I want to spice it up. Right, Bob? I'm going to spice things up today.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what we're going to do...
I'm not telling your wife that her birthday is boring, but...
No. That's spicy enough.
No, not at all. Yes.
We're going to do a sort of a modified show today. We always talk about legal news and business news, and we kind of tie it in, and then we go through some learning experiences, both with the law and with business. But today I think what we're going to do is separate it out, and we're going to go for maybe 30 minutes or so. We're going to talk about some of the legal stories that have come up, and we'll pick them apart like we always do. But then we're going to talk about business for the last portion of the show. And I want to make this shift and see how you guys like it. So please give feedback so we know if you like it. But today's topic is going to be managing expectations of your customers or clients. And that's going to be the business topic that we're going to get into. I think it's a really important topic, regardless of what kind of business you own, even if you don't own a business, but you're a manager or a supervisor. So we're going to talk about that, managing expectations of customers and clients. And we're also going to go through the news. We've got some good stories today, stories about zombie cookies and Uber and Jeep and fire deaths, all kinds of the usual fun things. So before we get into that, let me just thank our sponsor. Today's show is sponsored by Paychex. And Paychex is a company that we use all the time. They do our payroll. They do all of our tax work for employees. It's a really great company. It makes it super easy for us because, like I tell Bob all the time, I can't add and I can't subtract, and calculating percentages, forget it. So it's really great because they take all of that hard administrative work off of my plate and they just do it. They tell me what numbers the paychecks are and they calculate everything. So it's really great. And they're offering 2 free months, which is actually it's 1 month. I take that back. 1 free month of payroll processing for our listeners. So if you go to utlradio.com, a third of the way down the page under this month's sponsors, you'll see Paychex. Click on it and you'll get your free month of payroll processing. And that, if you're paying your employees every 2 weeks or every other week, you're going to get a full cycle and you're going to get to see how that works. So check that out. Also, I want to remind everybody about the app. The app, which there is a link to at the top of the page on utlradio.com, it has now been opened up to the Android market. And so all of those people who have Android phones that could not get the app before can now get it. It's free. There's no add-ons or costs related to it. And you will be able to look at the calendar, see upcoming events. You'll be able to listen to this show live. You'll be able to watch the videos from our video library that are listed on the app. There's all sorts of information, including the Ask an Attorney a Question link, which is kind of cool. You just ask your question on your smartphone or tablet, and we get it and we answer it. There's also links to various state statutes and statutes of limitations and court rules. And so if you are a do-it-yourselfer, it's a good resource for you because we've got everything in one place. So check that out, download that. And then finally, don't forget to use the new Ask Your Question tab on utlradio.com for the Tuesday Legal and Business Q&A live. Ask your questions, record it. We get the questions, we play it live on the air, and it's really kind of cool. So do that. And now, without further ado, why don't we start with the news, Bob?
That sounds great. Yes. You talk about Uber, and a lot of people are pro, a lot of people are con. It doesn't matter really where you're at, but it's whether or not you can use it. We actually have Goober, where I'm at, out in the sticks here. Alleged plainclothes officer yelling at an Uber driver. "You're not important enough to arrest," he says. Pix11.com telling us that a passenger caught on camera an explicative-laden rant by a man who said he was an officer and pulled over an Uber driver after the motorist allegedly honked at an unmarked police vehicle. Never a good call. A spokesperson for the NYPD said it is aware of the video and that they're looking into it. Based upon our initial review of the video, we cannot determine if the male is a member of the NYPD. However, this matter has been referred to the IA Bureau for further review, the department said in a statement. It all started about 2 p.m. Monday on Manhattan's west side. Sanjay Seth said in the video's caption, his Uber driver had come across an apparent unmarked police car stopped at the side of the road. Without his blinker or reverse lights on, perhaps double parked, the passenger said. The Uber driver pulled around and gestured that the officer should use his blinker. I'm sure he did, casually and non-offensively, and kept driving us, Seth wrote in the video's caption. That's when the officer flicked on his red and blue lights and aggressively pulled up behind the car, because that's how cops drive. Seth said, adding that the officer did not identify himself. The 3.5-minute video shows the video slamming the driver's door, cursing and asking how long the driver had been in the U.S. The only reason you're not in handcuffs, the police officer said, going to jail and getting summons in the precinct is because I have things to do. That's the only reason it's not happening, because this isn't important enough to me. You're not important enough. Don't ever do that again. In a statement, Uber called the officer's behavior unacceptable. Of course, the behavior in the video is wrong and unacceptable, and we appreciate the NYPD investigating the incident, the company said. We are in touch with our driver partner who was subjected to this terrible experience and will continue to provide any support he needs. There's a lot of questions with this particular story. I mean, you've got possibly a cop gone rogue, but my question is, to what degree does Uber owe any support to the driver because of the contract reasons?
Well, you know what? You probably have to assume that Uber drivers are independent contractors. I don't know. Right. I've never used Uber, but I would imagine the structure is that they're independent contractors. Probably they have their own vehicles. And if you know more about it, Bob, let me know. I think that that's how it would be structured. So if they're independent contractors, right, I think that the duty that Uber has to the driver is absolutely zero with respect to something like this. So, you've got an officer. Now, you could also, you've got the other area to explore, which is, would any employer, let's say it was an employer-employee relationship, would any employer owe a duty to the driver of a vehicle, let's say it's an employee again, because of the actions of a third party? And in a situation like this, the answer would generally be no. So if you're, a driver for Target and you're driving and a cop pulls you over and harasses you and says or does something to you, can you go back to your employer and say, you put me in this position, you gave me a truck with a blinker out, this is your fault and I was subjected to harassment? Really, no. There's really just no duty there. And then it triggers the next question, which is, well, what can the driver, assuming that this was an officer, what can he do? Because, sounds pretty racial or ethnic, some bias here.
Yeah, sure.
So what can he do? Can he turn around into the police department? And then you get into all those various immunities that get triggered. Now, if he could prove that he was the victim of some sort of bias attack, that would be enough, assuming that it's legitimate, to possibly get beyond the immunities, because the immunities don't protect officers who engage in discriminatory behavior. But, this is one of those things where, what are his damages? He feels upset. It probably goes nowhere. It probably gets lost in the various, mountains of files and internal affairs that the city is going to have. And You know,
maybe an apology issued.
maybe, you know, and then you have to, you have to wonder, because I think that taxi drivers and Uber drivers and people who are foreign, I really think, as much as I think that the cops in New York City are better and better trained than cops that are in like our local towns, where they get paid a ton of money to cross, you know, old ladies, and then they pull you over like it's the most important thing that ever happened to them. You know, they've got their hands on their gun because your taillight's out. I think that city cops are better, but I think that there is some sort of slight bias against a lot of the taxi drivers, because most of them are foreign. Most of them don't even really speak good English. So I think it's easy.
And if you've been in a cab at any time, you know how they drive.
Yeah. So, and it's not like that just in the city of New York, but it's like in Chicago and LA, you name it, everywhere. That's a job I wouldn't want. That's for sure.
No, not at all. No, thank you. Well, that's the thing where, you know, you start to talk about Uber and, you know, what the licensing is and what the responsibility of the driver is, and where that cuts off with the contractor, or which would Uber would be that particular case. Like you said, I don't think there's a whole lot of responsibility on Uber's part to make sure this guy is treated well or treated fairly or even gets paid half the time. I'm not sure how the app works, and maybe they get paid through that. That is their sole responsibility. But I'm sure Uber is probably even involved in this more for the free publicity than anything.
Yeah, I think so too. Definitely.
Oh, well, I will try. I may try Uber when I come to New York here in the fall. We'll see. A lawsuit filed, racial slur printed on Houston wedding day photo booth pictures. 7online.com telling us in Houston that a Fort Bend County couple is suing the owner of a photo booth that was at their wedding, claiming he and his company are responsible for the racist photo caption on some of the guests' printed pictures. The wedding was in August 2012 at a venue in Garden Oaks. The bride and groom, both African-American, hired Premier Photography, owned by James Evans, to provide an attendant and photo booth at the reception for guests to take photos commemorating the union. The photo caption was supposed to say the couple's first names and date. Instead, for some guests, it said poor N-word party. Anyone would find this caption offensive. I'm offended by it. I don't want to say it. Attorney Kathy Hale told Eyewitness News. Hale represented the couple who have sued Evans and the Premier Photography Company, claiming not only breach of contract for a memory stick of photos they say they never received, but also for the negligence and mental anguish. They trusted this company to provide them with a service on their most important day, and what they got was complete opposite. They got a slap in the face. Every time they think about their anniversary, they think about this. It's never going to go away, said Hale. Both Evans and his attorney declined an on-camera interview, but directed the television station to their responses filed in civil court. In one filing, they deny all the allegations. In another, they write, at a party of 100 people, there is no evidence linking the company to the offensive caption and no evidence of mental anguish. Hale disagrees and at least says they deserve an apology. You know, when you've got have you been to a wedding with a photo booth before? I've
been to a party that has had a photo booth, yeah, but not a wedding. Same thing, though.
Did they have an attendant? Did they have an attendant that kind of controlled things?
No, the booth was there, and you were able to go up and do whatever you wanted to do with the booth.
I'm wondering at what point can you prove that I guess, you know, I mean, and as any company, when you outsource your services and you provide an individual to supervise it, at what point are you really, truly reliable? You don't know who put that on there.
Right.
You?
No, and that's the thing. You know, if they were contracted to provide the machine and an attendant who was to stay by the machine and assist people, you know, you might have a duty. You might. But there's no way of knowing it. I'm going to assume that this is one of those photo booths where you can type your own message, obviously.
Sure.
Not something that was pre-programmed in the machine, because if it was a pre-programmed statement, then obviously that's a problem. And that's something that they would have some responsibility for. But if it's something that a guest came up and did, you don't have the any sort of legal duty to that family or that couple in this case to look at what other people are doing. You know, most often
sure.
you rent the booth, you rent the piece of equipment. You know, it's like renting a printer or renting whatever it might be. And what you do on that's up to you, and nobody's going to supervise that. I would venture to say that they probably did not have a full-time attendant there, because in the party that I went to, they stuck the booth, they showed you how to use it, and that was it. And you could write and do whatever you wanted to do. I would think that at a busy wedding, the photo booth is probably one small component of that wedding. And I don't think that they would have had anybody supervising that on a full-time basis. It seems kind of silly to do that. That's the point of it. It's a self-serve, fun, Jersey Shore type thing. I think this is a tough case to prove. Every attorney, right? Oh, every plaintiff's attorney, the mental anguish.
Yes. So,
I get mental anguish from reading some of these things. No, I think it's upsetting. And if I were that couple, I would absolutely be upset. And they have a right to be angry, but is their anger directed at the right place? Is it the photographer's
exactly
fault?
Well, in generally the photo booths I've seen, you get your picture right away. Did no one notice that this was an issue right away?
Yeah. I mean,
we don't know all the facts in this case, but there's a lot of questions here that you say, really?
You have to think that somebody did this as a joke, and I cannot imagine that anybody that was looking for more business from their photo booth would do something as stupid as that. I really think that the lack of evidence is going to be, in my opinion, the shortcoming of this case, because the plaintiff in a case always has the burden of proof. I'm the plaintiff. I've got to prove my allegations are true. I have to prove that you, the photographer or photo booth owner, you knew or should have known that this was going on, or that you did it intentionally. And, how are you going to connect that? What is the proof to show, unless it was pre-programmed into the machine? If you could show, look, this is a pre-programmed function, then I think you have them. Other than that, no, I don't see anything here. Maybe they're looking to get some sort of break off their photos. That's
sure.
And that's a thing that I can't. That's one thing though that just really drives me crazy with people. And I've thought about this for a while, because I struggle with this on a daily basis. When you are an attorney and you're representing criminals, you have a better chance of having and I don't know how to say this where it doesn't sound like I'm completely ridiculous, but a more forthcoming, forthright client. Not that they're telling you the truth, but they understand that they're being charged with a crime, and they know that you're there trying to help them either reduce their sentence or get a not guilty verdict. Very simple. The expectations, and we'll get into this later when we talk about that business topic, but the expectations are narrow in focus, and the people you're dealing with are fighting for their freedom or reduced sentences. When you're in a civil case, it seems as though the people that hire lawyers in civil cases, they're only out for one thing generally, and what is it? But money. And when you deal with money, I mean, you talk about that Bible saying money is the root of all evil. It really can be true, because when money gets involved, you've got people that will start their case saying it's not about the money, it's the principle of the thing. That is the absolute, that's the absolute worst reason to ever file a lawsuit. Principle of the thing, because it's not. It's time consuming. It's effort. It's money, both yours and what the attorney has to expend to prosecute your case. And it's just really frustrating, because a lot of times even good people can be sort of turned towards the dark side because they see that money carrot in front of them, and they want that carrot to get bigger and bigger. And it's really, really difficult when you deal with money, because when you've got a company like this, and this is where I'm going with this, maybe these people thought to themselves, the photographer was fine, but my friend Martha, she had these really cool pictures done, and ours are just okay, and I'm not really happy with them. You know what? I don't really like them. As a matter of fact, and as the days go by, right, it's like, oh, these suck. These are the worst pictures ever. And how much did we pay?
Get worse, yeah.
And so they turn around and they say, well, you know what? You know, one person showed me this picture, and this is what was written on it. Let's sue the company. They've got the money. As a matter of fact, we paid them, $10,000 to do our photos. So of course they've got the money. And then it snowballs into this thing where the attorney is feeding them, oh, mental anguish. Aren't you upset? You can't sleep. You can't eat. You can't go out of the house.
It's never going away.
Yeah. So I don't know. It gets frustrating when you have to deal with that. It's hard. You want people to get justice, but sometimes in people's mind, it's not about justice. It's about greed. It's like representing Gordon Gekko every time you've got a case involving money. So.
Well, and it just goes to show you, if you're in business where you're going to be leasing a piece of equipment where you're not going to be there to supervise it, make sure your paperwork's in line, because they will try to find a way, if they're hurt or they're injured in any way, shape, or form, to find you at fault.
Yeah. You are the deep pocket person there.
Look at the power tools that get rented every day. This is a photo booth.
Yeah.
Look at the trenchers and everything else that gets rented in these rentals. They'll rent you anything, and you don't even need to be an expert to handle it.
No, and that's that is a good point, because there was a case not too long ago where somebody rented a mulcher, and then it was a wood chipper, and the guy was trying to clear debris, and he got his arm sucked into the wood chipper, and of course it ripped his arm right off. And he tried to sue the manufacturer, saying a design defect, and that didn't go anywhere because there was nothing wrong with the machine. Then he tried to say that there should have been a guardrail that would have prevented him from sticking his arm in, but that would have impaired the function of the machine. And
sure,
it went away on a settlement ultimately. But you're right. I mean, there's so many things out there, but I think that plaintiffs, and I'm not saying that they're not injured, but I think that a lot of them look at businesses and say, we're entitled to more because, we paid them $5,000, we paid them $2,500 to rent this, we paid them whatever it might be. Oh, think about all the other people. They've got the money. They're not going to be hurting. And you have no idea. We represent a lot of photographers, and a lot of these photographers are, working for themselves. They are living client to client. They don't have a huge bankroll to sit on, and they're doing the best they can. And if you don't like that person's work when you go in to hire them, well, then you shouldn't hire them.
Careful. That'll make too much sense.
That's true. That's true.
There we go. So just be careful going into it. Class suit seeking damages for zombie cookies. No, they're not cookies made from dead people or people that don't want to be dead. San Francisco, an online ad company used secret zombie cookies to track mobile device users' activities. A class action claims in federal court. Lead plaintiff Anthony Henson sued Turn Incorporated on April 1st. It's no joke, accusing it of turning Verizon customers' mobile devices into tracking beacons that monitor users' behavior. Advertisers use bits of data called cookies to gather web information that could be used for personal targeted advertising. You see it all the time.
Yeah.
Henson claims that Turn's zombie cookies evaded detection and could not be deleted. Even if a person deleted Turn's cookie, the company had a process that will respawn the cookie, Henson says. Turn's active I knew you used to know the word to say that word. They didn't do it very well. Tracking people. It wasn't nice. They did it underhandedly.
It's Monday,
tracking
Bob.
people against their wishes and thwarting industry standard consumer safeguards of privacy is unconscionable. See, I have that one. Okay.
Very good.
The complaint states, Turn stopped using zombie cookies after a ProPublica report on it in January. It is our absolute desire to honor people's choices. Now, a Turn spokesman says, according to ProPublica, Henson seeks class certification, restitution, and damages for trespassing to chattels and business law violation. He also wants Turn in order to provide reasonable notice and choice to users about its data collection practices. This happens probably more than you even think.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's still a developing area of law, even though cookies have been around for a long, long time now. And most people are familiar with it if you say the term cookie and you establish that it's not the edible type. They get it.
Sure.
And when you see your phones now, every time you go to, a particular site and you've been searching something, let's say that you're searching, I don't know, pool equipment or lawyer or doctor. The next time you go to a site that has Google AdWords or AdSense integrated into it, you're going to get searches or advertisements based upon your searches. And I hear a lot of people that are just like, how do they know where I am? Because sometimes it happens where like you'll go into Target or Walmart or Starbucks or whatever, and the next thing you know, you're getting a coupon pop up on your phone. And, it's scary to some people because they feel like they're being tracked. And to an extent, you are. And to what extent the violation or invasion of privacy becomes illegal is such a fact-specific question that it's very difficult to say this is going too far, this is not. But in a case like this with the class action, what are their damages? We don't know. Is it an annoyance, an invasion of privacy?
Yeah, is anyone really truly damaged or affected by it is the question, more than it's just, hey, you know everything about me.
Right. The only thing that could trigger some damages are if this is a violation of any of the internet or computing laws that are out there. If it's a statutory violation, then it might be worth it. And you have to imagine that that's probably where the attorney for this proposed or purported class is looking to go. How am I going to get paid? How much money is out there? Is there a statute that provides for my payments to me? That's where it's got to go.
Seems somewhat surreptitious from the lawyer's part of the way of view, anyway.
Oh, that's what that word was.
Surreptitiously. I couldn't pronounce it. Knew what it meant.
Bob, there are days I can't pronounce my name, so I think we're on the same page.
All right. But yeah, it's and that's the thing. It's there's so much, like you said, there's so much undeveloped in the law that it's easy. It draws me back to what you said last week about how many companies put things in their contracts that may or may not be legal, but who's going to ask?
Yeah.
Nobody reads them anyway.
That's right.
So that's happening every day. Mom is suing a charter school after a scandal. Not what you'd think normally. Washington, according to courthousenews.com, after a charter school hired a substitute teacher through Craigslist, great sourcing idea, guys, she provided a student with oral sex in her room during a pep rally. The boy filmed it, and it went viral, his mother claims in court. Ta-da! It's magic. The mother of the 17-year-old boy sued the D.C. Public Charter School Board and Saving Our Students Through Educational Personnel on March 27th in D.C. Superior Court. Saving Our Students allegedly hired the sub without properly vetting her, you think, through an ad on Craigslist, which is not a party to the case. The mother, Jane Doe we'll call her, says the sexual abuse happened at the Options Public Charter School in October of last. She claims that even a cursory search would have revealed that the teacher, Simone Green, had been in legal trouble in Baltimore. Green, 22, worked for just one day at the school, October 17th, 2014, according to the complaint, which describes Options as a public charter school for at-risk youth. At risk for what? It took Green just that one day to develop a sexual relationship with the learning disabled 11th grade student who served as an office assistant that day, the boy's mother says. She says Green was flirtatious with her son, who gave her his cell number at the end of the second class he assisted her with. Green then texted him, and he asked in reply if she was kinky, according to the complaint. Miss Green responded to the message saying, "I don't tell, I show," the boy's mother says. The boy went to her room just before 3:30 p.m. as a pep rally was concluding, which is where the encounter occurred, according to the complaint. He recorded it on his cell phone for everyone else. Nice of him. 5 days later, the Washington Post reported that the video had gone viral within the school community. The two of them continued to text one another over the weekend, and on Monday, October 20th, the minor agreed to text message Ms. Green in the presence, custody, and control of law enforcement officials. The complaint states, it says they exchanged 24 texts and quotes several of the frankly sexual messages. The last message cited in the lawsuit is, defendant to victim, "This can ruin my whole life. So-and-so, why couldn't you just keep it to yourself?" because it's his fault. Good call. Police then arrested Green. Though the age of consent in the District of Columbia is 16, she was charged with first-degree sexual abuse of a minor because she was a teacher. Doe seeks $3 million in damages for battery and negligence. $3 million, a lot of money. That's an expensive tryst, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
What the heck? Is this a case of charter schools just being below the board when it comes to their practices, or is this just an isolated incident? And then, gosh and golly, this gal's done.
Yeah.
And what responsibility did the school have to know that this girl was there? I mean, we all kind of talk about it, but did they do due diligence?
Well, I would say no, because this is probably something that they should have seen, they should have known about. I really think that this highlights the importance of looking into who you're hiring before you hire them. And I think that, unfortunately, Craigslist is something that people use all the time. And you know what? There are good people that you can find in Craigslist ads. It's tough to generalize, but it has become a hiring tool primarily because a lot of the other hiring tools that are out there, websites like monster.com, they frankly suck. Monster, I've used Monster before. When Monster first came out, it was the go-to place. And then, you had Career Builder come up and the funny monkeys and orangutans that were in the commercials. But as far as producing results, it's expensive and you get very few quality hits depending upon the job that you're trying to place. So it's not, I don't think, an effect of using Craigslist per se. I think it's an effect of them just saying, okay, this looks good, and then not doing the right things, not taking the right steps to make sure that this person is who she says she is and that there's no problems, because she is a teacher and she does have that enhanced duty. The kid, if you ask the kid, he'd probably say this was the greatest teacher that he's ever had. But, is she going to be made to pay $3 million in damages? Probably not. But there's definitely statutory violations at play. And as far as her career goes, she's done. There was a case I had a couple of years ago, maybe 6 years ago, involving a female wrestling coach. She was also a teacher at a school. And when she was teaching the kids, they were all male students, how to wrestle, there was one kid that she had a thing for. So she would grab him in inappropriate places. And it developed into a relationship. She had no prior history of this. She just a one-time thing, and she was done. Almost went to jail over the whole thing, and her career as a teacher over, and she's listed as a sex offender. So it makes it difficult to find other jobs when you've got that sex offender designation.
Well, and unfortunately, I just wonder what the school possibly could have been thinking by not taking the next step to vet the individual. That's the thing.
Yep, absolutely.
So, do we want to talk about Chrysler real quick, and we'll wrap up and we'll move on to the next segment?
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds good.
Okay, yeah. Jury hitting Chrysler for $150 million in a Jeep fire death. CourthouseNews.com telling us a jury found Chrysler responsible for the death of a 4-year-old Georgia boy in a fire following a Jeep crash, and ordering the automaker to pay his family $150 million in damages. Thursday's verdict in the Georgia Superior Court in Decatur County came after only 2 hours of deliberations. The award of damages breaks down to $120 million for the loss of life and $430 million for his pain and suffering, which those numbers don't add up to the 150, which I think is just $30 million for pain and suffering. The case stemmed from the death of Remington Walden, who died in the March 2012 crash of his parents' Jeep Grand Cherokee. After the crash, the fuel tank installed behind the rear axle of the SUV leaked, setting it ablaze. During the trial, the attorney for the family contended that if the fuel tank had only been placed farther forward on the vehicle, Walden's death might have been prevented. The jury found the company acted with reckless and wanton disregard for human life in the design and sale of vehicles, and failed to warn customers that the SUV could be hazardous. In 2013, Chrysler recalled 1.56 million Jeep Grand Cherokees and Liberty SUVs manufactured between 1993 and 2007 to address concerns about their fuel tanks. In the statement, the company said it was disappointed in the verdict and could consider an appeal. So you've got the recall after the crash.
Right.
So something was up. 150 million. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a definite, let's prove a point. Let's make a point here because we know that Chrysler can afford that. And, I years ago used to do product liability work for some of the major automobile manufacturers and, at a very large firm in the city. And they've got this down to a science. They have experts that will come in and testify about the safety. It's the same guys over and over again. It really does work quite well when they're defending these claims. And every once in a while, you're going to get a claim like this where they're hit with a lot of damages because they did do something. But one thing that is important to understand with product liability cases, the fact that they made or issued a recall after the injury is not something that can ever be admissible in evidence because there's something called subsequent remedial measures, and subsequent remedial measures are not admissible to prove liability. So if you are a landlord and you have steps that don't have a railing and somebody falls down those steps,
we talked about this.
Yeah. So you now go up and you put that railing and they say, look, this proves that you were at fault. This proves that you were liable. So in Chrysler's case, you issued a recall. Therefore, this proves liability. That's not true. It can be used to prove other things like feasibility, like it was possible to fix the steps or fix the car. It was possible to remedy a situation before an accident, but it doesn't prove liability. But when you put your faith in a car manufacturer, I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time driving, and your safety and the safety of your children is really in the hands of the people that put that car together, that designed that car. And if that car is not going to protect you, I think that while this is a very high verdict, I think that car and auto manufacturers in general have a really heightened duty to make sure that the people that buy these vehicles, because cars are not cheap, and you want to make sure you're safe.
You would think, and was it the Corvair unsafe at any speed?
Say that again.
What was the car? What was the car that was considered by Naismith unsafe at any speed? Was that the Corvair?
I'm not a car guy. I don't know at all.
Oh, but you're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It's kind of how he became a consumer protection advocate per se.
Right.
And that was kind of the crux of his situation was, hey, you hit this thing, it's going to explode.
Right.
How much liability, I guess, I mean, we talk about how much money they have, but those previous case studies, when you get, gosh, you knew what was going to happen. Is that just something where, engineering has changed and they don't really regard that as something that was pertinent when they designed it? It's more what they've developed in the between then and now that says, hey, we can do this again, no big deal. We'll put the gas tank in the ass end of the vehicle and so be it. Or is that something that they just continue to overlook? And that's part of why this award is so big. It's just, or is it just basically the court making a point?
I think it's the court making a point, but I think that they would certainly go back and look at that, those cases that came before it and said, listen,
Sure.
This was a bad engineering design. This was a flawed design. The defect here is the design. So by placing the tank where they did, that could just be in and of itself a bad design. And why is it a bad design? Because we're going to look at all the cases that came before where manufacturers were placing the tank in this position. And then, you can use those cases to say, look how they knew, you should have known too. This was a bad design,
Gotcha.
Inherently bad because of the placement of it. So yeah, I mean, you could go back and that does impact it.
Sure. Whether or not the damage amount will be changed remains to be seen.
Right.
So they're appealing it. So as they probably would appeal anything of this magnitude. Wow.
Yeah.
So, But yeah, that wraps her up.
All right, good. Let's go into this next segment, and then you guys out there that are listening to this, we really want to hear your feedback on this, because I think what we do is we sort of mix in business and legal talk, and I wanted to see how it would play out if we kind of separated it out and talked specifically about a business topic. And that topic that I want to touch on today is expectations and managing expectations of clients or customers. And Bob, you've had a lot of experience with different businesses, and I work with different businesses. I am myself a business, and I think it's really important, if you are either currently, you're the owner of a business or you're thinking about it. One of the key components to success is really managing the expectations of your clients. If you have a customer or a client who comes in expecting the moon, you are pretty much done right from the beginning, because you're never going to live up to that expectation. Have you had experiences yourself, Bob, where you've had to deal with expectation issues of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, last night, as a matter of fact, and this is where I get very specific about things. And that's one of the keys that I've found is that, when you come in, they expect a lot, especially on a lot of contract sites. And as people continue to grow the freelance market, you're going to get that more and more. I want this for this. I want this for this. No, I want this for this. No, you hired me for this. We discussed it. We went through it. Matter of fact, there was a price issue last night with one of the services I provide, and said, well, I prefer that you did it for this. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll do this for that price, but normally for the price I quoted, you get this. So you choose what you want. And it was very specific and detailed. And that's one of the keys that I think is communicating effectively what the expectations are, so that you don't end up with a scope creep.
Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect description. I mean, scope creep is something that I've actually written about, and scope creep is really when you have a contract or you're going to be doing something for somebody, and it gets away from you, and you let the customer or client take you outside of what you had originally agreed to do. This happens in construction all the time, but it can even happen in things as simple as a kid's birthday party. If you're not detailed and clear and say, here's what this, you're going to pay $400 for a kid's birthday party at a bounce place. Here's what you get. You get A, B, C, and D. That's a good way of managing, because you know what you're going to get. But here's the question. Have you ever, Bob, had a situation where you have clearly identified the scope of what you're going to do? You've negotiated the price. You are doing your best. And at the end of your job, somebody is still not happy because they had different expectations. Has that ever happened?
Absolutely. I have two young daughters, and they work through me sometimes on occasion. They enjoy doing voiceovers. They enjoy singing. And so there are customers. Sometimes I have a recording studio. And so there are customers that want children to sing songs, and that's fine. We have no problem with that. The kids enjoy it. They make a little bit of money. They have fun doing it, and I don't have to pay for all the apps on their devices. But what it boiled down to was we had X amount of songs to sing. The lack of, and I've learned from this as well, the lack of instruction on their part and my lack of being detailed about the expectation created a gap, which I'm still dealing with. The app needed the songs to be sung exactly, note for note, pitch for pitch, how it needed to be sung based on their examples. And it wasn't defined going in. What happened was we sang them all in key, but we probably did some poetic license to it when it came to the notes, but it still sounded fine. We maybe instead of singing up where it needed to be, you sung down a third or down a fifth, and sent them back to it. Well, that's when the song started coming back. Well, this isn't right. This isn't right. And I'm like, well, why isn't it right? You have to explain it to me why it's not right. And that's when they said, well, it needs to be just like this. And they sent me just the melody line. I said, you didn't tell me that's what you needed. But what I did, because I always blame myself. If I do something wrong, I say, you know what? I didn't clearly explain to you what I was going to provide to you. We ended up redoing some of the songs, or at least parts of the songs, to make sure the customer had exactly what they needed for their app, because the app, the tones triggered lights in the app for the particular notes. And so we had to clean up some things after the fact. Now, going into those jobs, I am specific about what I ask for on those particular jobs. Is how do you want these sung? Do they need to be note for note, or do they just need to be entertaining?
Right. It's really.
But I took care of the customer in the back end.
Yeah, and sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't, because sometimes when you have a customer that has such high expectations and you don't perform to their level of expectancy, they're done with you. They're done. They don't trust you. Mm-hmm. It just gets worse and worse. And it's this cycle of destruction. And then, everything starts to fall apart. I think that, being as specific and detail oriented and discussing the project with somebody to the point where you both feel comfortable is really, really important. And then also maybe supplementing that verbal discussion with not just a contract, because the contract can oftentimes be very generalized. We're going to perform services and you're going to pay us. But maybe it's a good idea to specifically write down limitations or expectations. And, it happens in my profession all the time, because you have a discussion with somebody and you tell them, here's what we're going to do, or here's, especially with litigation, but even with the stuff that you might do for a company, here's what we're going to do. Here's the timetable. And then they start to get antsy and they don't like your timetable. They want to move things around. And if you give into that, you're creating problems for yourself. But it's very difficult, because trying to balance customer satisfaction with your work, the way that you work, because everybody works differently, can be very, very difficult. But having things in writing is important. Yeah, I mean, that's spells it out, but you're never going to make everybody happy.
No, that's exactly correct. What do you think? I'm a big prioritizer. When I sit down with someone and they have a larger project, say, okay, what do you need now, and what do you need next? How do you think that falls into everything?
I think it's really good. I think it's a good way of making sure that you're on the same page. But you come across these people out there that say, well, I hired you. You should know. Why are you asking me? And it really, it's not easy dealing with people's expectations. It just isn't. If you go to, a pizza place, it's going to be a little bit easier if you're the owner of that restaurant, because as long as you have on that menu pizza and here's the price, if somebody doesn't like it, they just typically don't come back, but they're not going to sue you over the pizza that you made. Or
trash you on social media because you won't serve pizza at their wedding.
Exactly. But other businesses, service-oriented businesses like the poor photographer, and who knows, maybe the guy did it, I don't know, but the photographer that we talked about earlier today.
Oh, great. Yeah, great idea.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he did not explicitly provide a waiver, or, even if a waiver might not necessarily be legally binding, let's say that waiver exceeds the bounds of the law. I think that still can be helpful to a business, because it would say, you're responsible. We did not pre-install anything. This is the way the machine came, and we're not responsible for any content that you guys create. That would be a good idea, because what happens if it wasn't the writing on the photos, but what happens if somebody took a topless photo in the photo booth, and then that was being circulated around, and it was offensive? What kind of wedding is this? Should they be sued
One
for
I
that?
want to go to.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you're providing the vehicle, but that delineation between here's the gun, what you do with it is your choice.
Right.
Is in outside of that particular example, probably can come back to bite you if you're not. Hey, you know what? You're responsible, and it says right here in the contract, for what you do with this machine. Don't break it.
Right. I think though that a lot of times, I mean, it's a funny point, but it's a good point. I think a lot of people are worried about protecting their business or their equipment, and that's their primary focus. But they don't think about that other end with a customer and how much damage can a customer do beyond something like, for example, the photo booth. I guarantee you, there's something in there that says if you damage the photo booth, you're responsible. But
sure,
did they go so far as to think about, well, what about content created by the users? And that comes down to a few things. I think having things in writing is extremely important, but more so than having things in writing is B, thinking through what you are actually going to put in writing. And it might take a little time. You and I have talked about these things in the past, and we both have learned from experiences, and we make changes as we go to make sure that we sort of take stock of, well, what happened in the last 6 months and how can we make it better? But that's something that everybody has to look at if you own a business.
You hope so, yeah. And that's the nice thing about getting someone involved that's has some experience. And let me back up. When you go into a business, or maybe you've worked, maybe you've been a contractor, or not even contractor. You've been on a contracting crew, and so now all of a sudden you're going to begin to be your own contractor. You're going to start your own construction business. You have a very focused, a narrow view of what to expect, because it's only based on your experiences. And going with those experiences, and I learned this again the hard way, is the wrong thing to do. Get someone involved that has experience, whether it's a lawyer or even an accountant. Go get an accountant that has multiple construction companies that they work for.
Right.
Now you're starting to understand not just the business workings, but like what we're saying is you're going to start to understand how your customers view and handle you as a businessman.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times, people don't want to use lawyers, which is completely fine. There are times when you don't need a lawyer. I am not a big believer in everything requires a lawyer, but to your point,
right,
everything does require some help, even if it's just a therapy session, if you will, where you're talking out with somebody else who maybe has been in your shoes, and you just say to them, listen, these are the problems that I'm having. If you look at a lot of these internet entrepreneurs, a lot of the passive income people, what you see is that they've got these leadership groups or management groups, and there's a whole bunch of these very successful entrepreneurs that will have, whether it's in person or on the internet, some sort of sit down, and they're going to go over what's happening to them. Hey, listen, I'm experiencing this in my business. Has anybody dealt with that? And that, I think, is an invaluable learning tool. And I think a lot of times small businesses don't have the ability to find like-minded people. They don't have the time, and they don't have the financial resources to, in their minds, waste time talking to a group of people. They need to be in their office or in their business working. But I think that could be a mistake.
And there are tools out there. I mean, LinkedIn is a great tool for that.
Yeah, it is. You can go and you can find a group.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find people in your field that, you just send an email to or a note to, or a friend of a friend. And there's some tools out that you can find, and gosh, and even Facebook. But do you think a lot of it is information gathering? Because you're not going to think of every customer situation. But by gathering information coming in, at least you know what's going to, you have a degree of understanding of what to expect.
Yeah. And you know what? No matter how prepared you are always going to have a customer or a client who just does not, you just can't reason with them. And I think that it takes, especially for certain people with certain temperaments, so certain, innate personality characteristics, somebody that might be offended easily, somebody that might feel badly about themselves when somebody criticizes. I think that it does take a level of experience with those sorts of situations that you can develop thicker skin. I think it's hard to be a business owner and not have some layers of thick skin.
Sure. Well, and not all customer relationships end well. I'm sure you've had situations where you just decided, hey, you know what, it's probably best we part ways.
Yeah.
How do you handle those things?
It's really, really hard because you struggle with well, did I do a good enough job? Or, what's going to happen? I think a lot of the problems with business owners, and I'll speak, from my own experience, it can be from fear. I'm afraid of what they're going to say. I'm afraid of what can happen. I'm afraid of what my reputation would be. And then I think that you end up being stuck in relationships with people that are no good. I mean, a business relationship, you could make the example of dating a girl or a guy. You know that this relationship isn't working. You know it's destructive, but you're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings, or you're afraid of having them yell at you. And so you stick it out, and you know that relationship's not going to work. It's the same thing, because it's still, if you're a business, you're still a person, and there's still this interpersonal relationship, and you are not going to connect with every single person that you find. And you have to be able to realize that, because here's what I've found personally. Bad relationships with clients and customers can make you physically sick. I care a lot about what I do. I try to do my best. I try to give everybody what they want. And sometimes I find myself giving so much that I'm actually giving away parts of me, and, losing my sense of freedom and independence. And, I think back to when I used to work on Wall Street, and you were a number, between 1 and 150 of lawyers that were just floating around, and, you were only as important as the partner viewed you to be. And then, I've come through various stages where I was a partner, and then, ultimately started my own firm. It's very hard as the owner of your own firm, because you are responsible for the work of everyone. And when you're a smaller firm, we're a small boutique firm. When you're a smaller firm, everything falls on your shoulders. And when you have bad relationships with people, it can make you feel bad about yourself. And that is the absolute worst thing. And
I think a lot of that drives to honesty in yourself. And how it is. Sales over promises everything. Whenever I've worked with a sales department, and you're in operations, they dump something on your lap, and you say, we don't do that, or we've never done this, or we can do it, but you work to it. In operations works to achieve it. In sales, when you're your own company, you're the salesperson, you're the operator. Understanding your boundaries and being honest about that with your customer. As we talk about effective communication, saying, hey, great. I have an example. I've not done animated videos before. I don't like to do them because there's so many people over in other countries that can do them much more cheaply than I can, and probably much better. And so when people ask me about it, I'm upfront with them and honest, say, I don't do them. I can do them. And it just depends on what you want and what I can do. And at least put the ball back in their court to make that decision based on my honesty. And if they do say, hey, yeah, we'd like you to do it. Okay, let's talk about what you want. And again, that communication, I think, is whatever you do is the biggest key.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You have to be able to be honest with yourself.
90 seconds.
And I think that, that's really the most important thing that you can take away from this. So it looks like we're running out of time. I think this show was a shorter show today, Bob. So unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap this up. But we will get back into this next week. We can even continue with this topic. But everybody out there who downloads this podcast, please let us know what you think about this new format. And if you like the idea of hearing about our experiences and then talking about a particular business topic, because I think it'd be really great. And Bob and I are excited about it. Bob, we've got 60 seconds.
Absolutely love to hear what other people think.
Yep. So
about their experiences as well.
Go to utlradio.com. All the links to all the sites, all the ways to contact us are right there. Let us know what you think. We will be back next week, and I will be back tomorrow with Business and Legal Q&A Live. Just scheduled a shorter show today and didn't even realize it. So sorry for rushing off, but we will be back next week with the full show. It was a Monday after a holiday weekend, and so I cannot say that I'm fully functional.
Does it all.
That's right. All right, that's going to do it for today. I'll be back tomorrow. Bob and I will be back next week, and we look forward to your comments.
10 seconds.
Thanks for joining us. Remember that there's power in understanding the law.